Close your eyes and imagine the dirtiest place you've ever been. Now multiply that by 1,000. Add the smell of death, human waste, and unwashed bodies. Add the sounds of people dying in agony just feet away from you. Add the certainty that you'll probably be dead within a year. That was daily life in early California. This isn't a story about adventure or opportunity. This is a story about brutality, the kind that breaks bones and spirits. This is about dirt, the kind that carries disease into every wound, every meal, every breath you take. This is about danger so constant that you stop being surprised when someone dies and start being surprised when someone survives. You've heard about the California Gold Rush. You've seen the romanticized versions in movies and textbooks. They lied to you. They showed you adventure and left out the dysentery. They showed you determination and left out the dead bodies floating in rivers. They showed you the dream and completely erased the nightmare. Let me tell you what they didn't show you. They didn't show you the miner who worked for 6 months straight, found nothing, and hanged himself from a tree while his campmates ate breakfast 20 feet away. They didn't show you the woman who gave birth in a tent during a rainstorm while mud seeped through the canvas floor. They didn't show you the child whose job was to pick through human waste looking for bits of gold that had been swallowed and passed. Early California wasn't just hard. It was brutal in ways that would break you. It was dirty in ways that would sicken you. It was dangerous in ways that would kill you before you understood what was happening. For the next several thousand words, I'm going to prove exactly what the title promises. You'll understand why life in early California was a relentless assault on human dignity, health, and survival. You'll see the brutality that shaped every single day. You'll smell the filth that people lived in. You'll feel the danger that stalked every moment. By the end, you'll understand one thing clearly. Early California was hell with a golden coating, and the people who lived through it paid a price we can barely comprehend. We're placing you in California between 1848 and 1870, the period when brutality, filth, and danger defined every aspect of existence. This is a post-gold rush discovery, when the entire social order collapsed under the weight of 300,000 desperate people flooding into a region with no infrastructure, no sanitation, no law, and no mercy. Understand the scale of what happened. California's non-native population went from about 14,000 in early 1848 to over 300,000 by 1855. Imagine your town's population multiplying by 20 in 7 years, with zero preparation, zero planning, and zero concern for human welfare. That's what happened here. The landscape itself was hostile. If you came by sea, you survived months of sailing that killed people regularly. Ships were overcrowded, disease-ridden, and frequently wrecked. If you came overland, you crossed deserts where people died of thirst within sight of each other, and mountain passes where winter could trap and kill entire parties. The Donner Party became famous, but they weren't unique. They were just the ones people heard about. You arrive in California already traumatized, exhausted, and probably sick. What greets you makes the journey look merciful by comparison. San Francisco in 1849 was a festering wound of a city. There were no sewers, no garbage collection, no sanitation of any kind. Human waste ran through the streets. Dead animals rotted where they fell. The bay itself became a dumping ground for everything too disgusting even for the streets, which is saying something. The whole city was built on desperation and garbage. Literally. When the mud got too deep to walk through, people threw anything solid into it to create paths. Bags of flour, broken furniture, abandoned cargo, it all went into the mud. Some areas were built on ships that had been abandoned and partially buried. You were walking on a foundation of rot. Fire was a constant threat because everything was built from whatever materials were available: canvas, scrap wood, nothing designed to last or resist flames. San Francisco burned completely to the ground 6 times between 1849 and 1851. Each time, it was rebuilt just as shoddily, ready to burn again. People died in these fires, trapped in structures that were essentially kindling. Mining camps were worse. They sprang up wherever someone found gold, with no planning whatsoever. Hundreds or thousands of men would swarm to a location and create an instant slum. These weren't communities. They were concentrations of desperate, filthy, armed strangers competing for limited resources. The environment was trying to kill you. Summer heat in the mining regions regularly exceeded 110 degrees. Men died of heat stroke while standing waist-deep in rivers. Winter brought flooding that washed away entire camps, killing everyone too slow to escape. Spring brought mud so deep that horses drowned in it. Water sources were destroyed almost immediately. Thousands of miners would descend on a river or stream, digging, panning, defecating, and dying in the water. Within weeks, clear streams became toxic sludge. People drank this water anyway because there was nothing else. The wildlife was dangerous. Grizzly bears were everywhere and highly aggressive. They were larger than modern grizzlies, some weighed over 1,500 pounds, and they had no fear of humans. Attacks were regular. Rattlesnakes hid in every pile of rocks or wood. Mountain lions stalked the forests. Even the insects were deadly. Mosquitoes carried malaria, fleas carried typhus, and everything bit or stung seemed to get infected immediately. Los Angeles was a violent pueblo of about 1,600 people, where murder was so common that it barely drew attention. One study found that Los Angeles had a murder rate of 1,240 per 100,000 people in the 1850s. For comparison, the modern murder capital of America hovers around 60 per 100,000. Los Angeles was 20 times more dangerous than the worst modern American city. This was your new home, a place where brutality, filth, and danger weren't occasional problems. They were the defining characteristics of existence. Now let's talk about what your daily life looked like. Your day begins in filth. You sleep in clothes you haven't changed in weeks, on ground that's probably damp, in a space that smells like a combination of sweat, mildew, and human waste. If you have a tent, it's canvas that leaks and provides no real protection from elements or insects. If you don't have a tent, you sleep under whatever shelter you could construct from branches and mud. You share this space with other men, strangers who might rob you, who definitely have parasites and who cough disease into the air you breathe all night. There's no privacy. You hear everything: snoring, coughing up blood, nightmares, dysentery attacks. The sounds of human misery are your lullaby. When you wake, you need to relieve yourself. There's no bathroom, no outhouse, often not even a designated area. You walk into the brush and add to the general contamination of the area. You use your hand and rinse it in whatever water is available, the same water you'll drink from later. This is how diseases spread, but you have no choice. The smell is inescapable. Mining camps and early California towns reeked in ways that would make you vomit if you encountered them today. The smell of unwashed humans, and we're talking about people who might bathe once every few months. The smell of open latrines and human waste that no one removes. The smell of rotting food, dead animals, and in summer, the overwhelming stench of decay as the heat intensified everything. Your body is covered in dirt. Not the kind of dirt from a day of gardening. We're talking about dirt ground into every pore, under every nail, in every crease of your skin. It never comes off completely because you never really wash. Water is too precious or too contaminated to waste on bathing. The dirt mixes with sweat and creates a layer of grime that becomes part of you. Your hair is matted and full of lice. Everyone has lice. You've stopped fighting it. You scratch constantly, creating sores on your scalp that get infected and attract flies. The flies land on everything: your food, your wounds, your face while you sleep. They lay eggs in anything organic, including infected wounds on living people. Food is a brutal reality. You eat the same things every day. Salt pork that's more salt than pork, hardtack biscuits so hard they can break your teeth, and beans. The beans are often filled with weevils. You can see them crawling. You eat them anyway because you're hungry and there's nothing else. The weevils are protein. Fresh food is a fantasy. An apple costs a day's wages. A fresh egg might cost 3 days' wages. Most miners go months without eating anything that grew recently. Scurvy is epidemic. Your gums are bleeding as you eat your maggot-infested food. Cooking happens over open fires using pots that are never properly cleaned. Everyone shares the same pot, the same utensils. If someone in camp has typhoid, everyone gets typhoid. Food poisoning is constant. You're always either recovering from it or coming down with it. Water is killing you slowly. Every water source near mining areas is contaminated with human waste, mercury from mining operations, and general filth. The water is often visibly dirty. You can see particles floating in it. You drink it anyway because the alternative is dying of thirst. Diarrhea is so common that you consider it normal. Blood in your stool is just another Tuesday. Your clothes are rotting on your body. You wear the same pants, same shirt, same boots for months. The fabric weakens from constant wear, becomes stiff with dried sweat and dirt, and eventually falls apart. Replacing clothes is expensive, so you patch them with whatever's available. Most miners look like scarecrows wearing rags. Your boots have holes. Your feet are constantly wet, covered in blisters that never heal, infected with fungus. Foot rot is common. The skin between your toes literally rots away, turning black and filling with pus. You keep walking on these feet because you have no choice. Every minor injury becomes a crisis. You scrape your hand on a rock. Within a day, it's infected. The infection spreads up your arm, creating red streaks under your skin. You develop a fever. You might die from this scrape, and you know it. There are no antibiotics, no real medical care, just hope that your body can fight off the infection. Your body is breaking down. Malnutrition is weakening your immune system. Constant exposure to disease is overwhelming it. Exhaustion from brutal labor leaves you with no reserves. Small injuries that should heal don't. Cuts from weeks ago are still oozing. Your body is losing the ability to repair itself. The weather is relentless. In summer, you work in heat that makes you dizzy and sick. There's no shade in most mining areas. Everything has been cut down or dug up. You drink the contaminated water, which gives you diarrhea, which dehydrates you further. Men collapse and die from heatstroke regularly. In winter, you're wet and cold constantly. Your tent leaks. Your clothes are damp. You can't get dry. Hypothermia kills people who think they're just uncomfortable. Pneumonia strikes the weakened and kills them in days. Sleep offers no real rest because you're never comfortable, never truly safe, never free from the sounds and smells of suffering. You sleep from exhaustion, not from comfort. You wake up feeling worse than when you lay down. This is daily life. Not an emergency, not a crisis. Just the normal, brutal, dirty, dangerous reality of existing in early California. And we haven't even talked about the work yet. The work that awaits you is back-breaking, dangerous, and almost certainly pointless. You came to California with dreams of easy gold, and instead you found labor that destroys your body while keeping you in poverty. If you're panning for gold, you spend 12 to 16 hours per day bent over a river. Your back is locked in a permanent ache that never goes away. Your hands go numb in the freezing water. Even in summer, river water running down from the Sierra Nevada is painfully cold. You scoop gravel, swirl it in your pan, squint at the results, and see nothing. You do this thousands of times per day. The repetitive motion destroys your body. Your shoulders develop chronic pain, your wrists swell. Your knees, bent for hours at a time, lock up when you try to stand. You're aging decades in months. Men in their 20s move like they're 60. And for what? Most days you find nothing. Some days you find a few flakes of gold dust worth perhaps 50 cents. Occasionally you might find enough to earn $1 or $2. You need at least $20 per week just to survive, to buy the terrible food, keep your minimal shelter, and replace worn-out tools. The math doesn't work. You're going broke while working yourself to death. Some men work in hard rock mines and their fate is worse. You descend into tunnels held up by questionable timbers, breathing air thick with rock dust and mercury vapor. The tunnels are dark, lit by dim candles or oil lamps that barely penetrate the blackness. You swing a pickaxe for hours in cramped spaces that don't allow you to stand upright. Cave-ins are routine. The earth trembles, the timbers crack, and suddenly tons of rock are falling. If you're lucky, you're killed instantly. If you're unlucky, you're buried alive, trapped in darkness with broken bones, slowly suffocating as you wait for a rescue that probably won't come. The mine owners rarely risk additional lives to recover bodies. The dust you breathe is destroying your lungs. Every breath deposits particles that your lungs can't clear. Over months and years, your lungs fill with scar tissue. You develop a cough that never goes away, bringing up black mucus. Eventually, you drown in fluid produced by your own damaged lungs. This is called miner's consumption, and it's a death sentence delivered one breath at a time. Mercury is used extensively in gold extraction, and it's poisoning everyone who works with it. Mercury vapor damages your brain and nervous system. You develop tremors, personality changes, memory loss. You become irritable, paranoid, and erratic. Mad as a Hatter was a real phenomenon, mercury poisoning that drove people insane. Gold miners experience the same thing. If you work for a mining company rather than working your own claim, you're paid starvation wages. Maybe $3 per day if you're white, less if you're Chinese, Mexican, or Native American, but everything costs 5 to 10 times what it costs back east. That $3 buys you terrible food and nothing else. You can't save money. You can't improve your situation. You're trapped in a cycle of dangerous work and poverty. Chinese workers building the Central Pacific Railroad face conditions that amount to a death sentence. They're given the most dangerous jobs, handling nitroglycerin explosives, working on cliff faces hundreds of feet above rocky ground, tunneling through mountains where cave-ins and explosions kill dozens at a time. They're paid less than white workers and charged for their own food and supplies. Many end up in debt to the company despite working brutally long days. When they die, and hundreds do, their bodies are sometimes shipped back to China for burial, but often they're just buried in unmarked graves along the railroad line or left where they fell. Accidents are constant across all types of work. In logging camps, enormous trees fall unpredictably, crushing men beneath them. Saw blades in mills catch clothing and pull workers into the machinery, severing limbs or killing them outright. On farms, equipment malfunctions cause horrific injuries in remote areas where no medical help exists. There's no workers' compensation, no safety regulations, no recourse if you're injured. If you can't work, you don't eat. It's that simple. Men work with broken bones, infected wounds, and illnesses that should have them bedridden because the alternative is starvation. Foremen and mine owners are brutal. They view workers as disposable. If you complain about conditions, you're fired and replaced within the hour. There are always more desperate men willing to risk death for a few dollars. Your life has no value to the people who profit from your labor. Some men turn to other work. Gambling, running saloons, selling overpriced goods to other miners. These are often more profitable than actual mining, which tells you something about how futile the mining itself was. But these occupations have their own dangers. Gambling disputes end in shootings. Saloon owners are robbed regularly, and merchants are often swindled or attacked. The poverty is grinding and absolute. You're not just poor. You're trapped in a system designed to extract your labor while keeping you desperate enough to continue. The people making money in California aren't the miners. They're the merchants, the mine owners, and the transport companies. You're just the disposable labor that makes their fortunes possible. Your body is the price you pay. Every day of work takes something from you that you'll never get back. Your back, your hands, your lungs, your health, all sacrificed for wages that won't even keep you alive. This is the reality of work in early California, brutal, dangerous, and economically futile. Death is so common in early California that it becomes background noise. You wake up to find the man who was coughing in the next tent died during the night. You shrug and continue your day. This isn't callousness, it's survival. If you stopped to mourn every death, you'd spend all your time mourning. Cholera sweeps through camps like wildfire, and it's horrifying. The disease incubates for a few days, then strikes with overwhelming force. You feel fine in the morning. By afternoon, you're vomiting and experiencing diarrhea so severe and frequent that you can't leave the latrine area. By evening, you've lost so much fluid that your skin is shriveled, your eyes are sunken, and you're in agony from muscle cramps. By morning, you're dead. During outbreaks, bodies accumulate faster than they can be buried. In San Francisco during the 1850 cholera epidemic, corpses were stacked in warehouses. The smell of decomposition mixed with the smell of the dying. People walked past dead bodies in the streets because there was nowhere else to walk. The death toll was staggering. Thousands died in a matter of weeks. Dysentery is endemic. Almost everyone has it at some level. Your intestines are constantly inflamed and bleeding. You have diarrhea mixed with blood and mucus multiple times per day. The dehydration weakens you, the blood loss makes you anemic, and the constant cramping is exhausting. Some forms of dysentery bore holes through your intestinal walls, creating abscesses that fill with pus and kill you slowly. Typhoid fever is another killer. You contract it from contaminated water, which is essentially all water in mining areas. The fever builds over days, eventually reaching 104 or 105 degrees. You become delirious, sometimes violent. Rose-colored spots appear on your chest. Your intestines might perforate, spilling their contents into your abdominal cavity. The resulting peritonitis kills you in absolute agony over several days. Malaria infests the Central Valley, transmitted by the massive mosquito populations in the swampy areas. You get infected, and the malaria parasites invade your red blood cells. Every few days, the parasites break out of the cells simultaneously, triggering episodes of violent shaking chills followed by fevers that make you feel like you're burning alive. Some people die during the acute phase. Others survive but are weakened for life, unable to work during recurring fever episodes. Tuberculosis, consumption, is everywhere. It spreads easily in crowded, unsanitary conditions. TB is a slow, terrible death. Over months or years, the bacteria eat away at your lungs. You develop a chronic cough that eventually brings up blood. You lose weight until you're skeletal. Your skin becomes pale and translucent. You literally waste away while slowly suffocating as your lungs fill with fluid and dead tissue. There's no cure, no treatment, just a slow decline toward death. Scurvy is epidemic because almost no one has access to fresh fruits or vegetables. Your body stops producing collagen, the protein that holds you together. Your gums don't just bleed, they rot away, exposing your tooth roots until your teeth fall out. Old wounds reopen because your body can't maintain the healed tissue. You develop massive bruises from the slightest touch because your blood vessels are breaking down. You become weak, depressed, and eventually die from internal bleeding or infection. Injuries that would be minor today kill regularly. You cut your hand on a piece of metal. The wound gets contaminated with the omnipresent filth. Within days, you have an infection spreading up your arm. Red streaks appear under your skin, blood poisoning, sepsis moving toward your heart. Your arm swells and turns dark. The pain is excruciating. You develop a fever and become delirious. Your heart races as your body tries to fight the infection. Most likely, you die. If you're lucky, a doctor amputates your arm before the infection reaches vital organs, though the amputation itself will probably kill you from shock or subsequent infection. Medical care is brutal and largely ineffective. Doctors don't understand germ theory yet. They think diseases are caused by bad air or imbalanced humors. They operate with dirty instruments, never washing between patients. They're literally spreading infection from one person to the next without realizing it. Surgery is a nightmare. If you need an operation, you get whiskey for pain relief if you're lucky, nothing if you're not. The surgeon cuts into you with tools that aren't sterile, his hands covered in blood from previous patients. Most surgical patients die within days from infection. The operation might be successful, but the bacteria kill you anyway. Amputation is the solution for any serious limb injury. Crushed leg. Amputation. Severe infection. Amputation. The doctor saws through your bone while you're awake, maybe drunk if whiskey is available. Most amputees die from shock during the procedure or infection afterward. Those who survive are now disabled in a world that offers nothing for disabled people. Childbirth kills women constantly. Labor complications that are easily managed today were death sentences then. Women hemorrhaged and bled to death. They developed infections after delivery and died of puerperal fever within days. Babies got stuck during delivery, and both mother and child died. The maternal mortality rate was horrific. Pregnancy was genuinely one of the most dangerous things a woman could experience. Mental illness gets no treatment whatsoever. Men break under the stress, isolation, and trauma. Some become violent and are killed by other minors defending themselves. Some become catatonic and waste away. Some walk off into the wilderness and are never seen again. There's no help, no treatment, no compassion. You either stay functional or you die. Death is so routine that it's treated casually. Bodies are buried in shallow graves, often with no marker. Cemeteries fill quickly and new ones are established. In some camps, the cemetery becomes the largest part of the settlement. When towns grow, they're literally built over old graveyards. You might be walking over dozens of unmarked graves and never know it. Violence in early California isn't an occasional crisis. It's a constant feature of daily life. You wake up armed, work armed, and sleep with a weapon within reach because any moment might be your last. San Francisco is controlled by criminal gangs, particularly the Sydney Ducks, Australian convicts who terrorize the city. They operate openly, robbing businesses, attacking people on the streets, and setting fires to create chaos they can exploit. During fires, they loot buildings while people try to escape the flames. The city has virtually no police force capable of stopping them. When buildings burn, the Ducks often block firefighting efforts so they can steal more. They've turned disaster into a business model. People die in fires while criminals ensure the fires spread farther. This happens repeatedly, and no one can stop it. Vigilante justice becomes the norm because there's no real legal system. When citizens get fed up, they form committees and start hanging people. In 1851, the San Francisco Committee of Vigilance hanged 4 men and deported dozens more. In 1856, another vigilante committee hanged 4 more and controlled the city for months. This isn't justice, it's mob rule with a fancy name. Sometimes they hang guilty people. Sometimes they hang whoever was convenient or unpopular. If you're accused of a crime, you might face a quick trial by angry mob followed by immediate execution. Due process doesn't exist. In mining camps, violence is the only law. Claim disputes are settled with fists, knives, or guns. If someone takes your claim, you either fight them for it or you lose it. Many disputes end in death. The survivor keeps the claim. That's the entire legal system. Murder is shockingly common and rarely punished. A man kills someone over a gambling debt, and nothing happens because there's no sheriff, no jail, no court. If the dead man's friends want revenge, they might kill the murderer. More often, everyone just moves on because death is so common that it barely registers. Racism fuels epidemic violence against non-white populations. Chinese miners are targeted constantly. White miners, angry about competition, attack Chinese camps regularly. They burn tents, steal gold, beat people, and commit murders with complete impunity. Chinese victims can't testify in court against whites, so there's no legal recourse whatsoever. Mexican and South American miners face similar violence. Many are driven from profitable claims by armed mobs of white miners who simply take whatever they want. The foreign miners' tax, $20 per month, is enforced selectively and violently against non-whites while European immigrants pay nothing. Native Americans face genocide. California's government pays bounties for Native American scalps. Private militias hunt them for sport. They're poisoned, shot, enslaved, and driven from their land. Entire villages are massacred, men, women, and children killed and left where they fall. This is official policy, funded by state money. Between 1848 and 1870, California's native population drops from about 150,000 to under 300,000. That's 80% of the population exterminated in 2 decades. This is one of the most successful genocides in American history, and it happened during the supposed golden age of California. Women face constant danger of sexual assault. In a population that's 90% male, women are targeted constantly. Rape is epidemic and almost never prosecuted. Women can't walk alone safely. Those working as prostitutes, many forced into it by poverty, face violence from customers, pimps, and society. If a prostitute is murdered, the investigation is minimal or non-existent. Bar fights kill people nightly. Men drink poisonous liquor that makes them aggressive. They argue over cards, women imagine slights. Someone pulls a knife or gun, someone dies. The body is dragged outside to make room for more drinking. By morning, there's another body in the street. Road agents, highwaymen, make travel deadly. Stagecoaches carrying gold shipments are robbed regularly. Travelers are murdered for whatever they carry. Some roads become so dangerous that people travel in large armed groups, and even that doesn't guarantee safety. Bandits sometimes attack groups, knowing that most travelers are exhausted, sick, or poor shots. Shanghaiing is a thriving business in San Francisco. Men are drugged in bars, then kidnapped and forced to work on ships. They wake up at sea, already days from land, forced into maritime slavery. Some die at sea. Some manage to escape at distant ports. Few ever make it home. Bars and boarding houses that cater to sailors are particularly dangerous. You might go in for a drink and wake up in the Pacific. Organized crime controls prostitution, gambling, and protection rackets. They bribe officials, kill competitors, and operate completely openly. The Barbary Coast District is famous for vice and violence. Tourists are warned never to go there, but people live and work there because they have no choice. Theft is constant. You can't leave anything unguarded. Tools, food, clothes, gold, anything valuable will be stolen if given the chance. Many miners sleep on top of their gold dust because hiding it anywhere else means it will be discovered and taken. There's no safety, no protection, no escape from the violence. You live in constant awareness that you might be killed today for your possessions, for your claim, for no reason at all. Early California is lawless in the truest sense. Life is cheap, violence is routine, and justice doesn't exist. If early California was brutal for white American men, it was exponentially worse for everyone else. The people with the least power suffered the most, and their suffering was both ignored and actively perpetuated by the society around them. Women in early California existed in a world designed to exploit them. Those who came with husbands found themselves doing triple labor, maintaining their own household, taking in laundry or cooking for paying customers to earn desperately needed money, and often working alongside their husbands in mines or fields. They worked from before dawn until after dark, every single day. Laundry work destroyed women's bodies. They hauled water, heated it over fires, scrubbed clothes by hand using harsh lye soap that ate away at their skin. Their hands became raw, cracked, and infected. Their backs gave out from bending over wash tubs. They aged decades and years. Single women had almost no respectable options. They could try to run boarding houses, which meant cooking for and cleaning up after dozens of men. They could work as seamstresses for minimal wages, or they could become prostitutes, which many did because it was often the only way to survive. Prostitution in early California was a nightmare. Women were controlled by pimps and madams who took most of their earnings. They served dozens of customers per day in conditions that were degrading and dangerous. They faced constant risk of violence. Customers beat them, raped them more brutally than the transaction included, or killed them. If a prostitute died, few people cared enough to investigate. Sexually transmitted diseases were epidemic among prostitutes, and there was no effective treatment. Syphilis destroyed bodies and minds over years. Gonorrhea caused chronic pain and often led to fatal infections. Mercury treatments for syphilis caused as much damage as the disease itself. Pregnancy was terrifying for prostitutes. If they carried to term, they gave birth in terrible conditions with no real medical care. Many babies died. Many women died in childbirth. Some women attempted abortions using dangerous methods that frequently caused fatal infections or hemorrhaging. The suicide rate among prostitutes was appalling. Many saw death as the only escape from their situation. They poisoned themselves with laudanum, slit their wrists, or drowned themselves. Society blamed them for their own misery and moved on without reflection. Women had no legal rights. They couldn't vote, couldn't serve on juries, couldn't testify in many legal situations. If a woman was assaulted or raped, the legal system offered minimal protection. Cases were rarely prosecuted, and when they were, the woman's character was put on trial more than the attacker's actions. Married women had no right to their own property or earnings in many cases. What they earned belonged legally to their husbands. They couldn't escape abusive marriages easily. Divorce was difficult, socially condemned, and left women destitute. Many stayed in dangerous marriages because leaving meant poverty and social death. Children in early California were robbed of childhood. Boys were put to work as soon as they were physically capable, often by age 8 or 10. They worked in mines, on farms, in shops, doing brutal labor that stunted their growth and development. Accidents killed and maimed child workers regularly. No one protected them. Girls were often married off by age 14 or 15. They went from childhood to marriage to pregnancy in rapid succession, their bodies not fully developed for childbearing. Many died in childbirth. Others were trapped in marriages that were essentially legal ownership by older men. Orphans were epidemic because parents died at such high rates. Orphaned children became beggars, thieves, or unpaid servants for families that adopted them. Sexual abuse of orphaned children was common and rarely punished. These children had no protection, no advocates, no chance. Chinese immigrants faced systematic oppression designed to exploit their labor while denying them any rights or dignity. They were forced to work abandoned mining claims and paid a special tax for the privilege. When they succeeded in finding gold, white miners attacked them and stole it. They couldn't testify in court against whites, meaning whites could rob, assault, or kill them without legal consequences. Chinese workers were given the most dangerous railroad construction jobs. They handled explosives, worked on cliff faces, and tunneled through mountains. They died by the hundreds. When workers died in tunnels, the company sometimes sealed the tunnel rather than recover the bodies. These men were literally buried in the railroad they built. Chinese women in California were often trafficking victims, forced into prostitution or domestic servitude. They were bought and sold, worked until they were used up, then discarded. They had no way to escape and no one to help them. Mexican Californians who had lived in California for generations saw their world destroyed. Their land was stolen through legal manipulation and outright violence. Families that had owned vast ranchos for decades were reduced to poverty, working as laborers on land that had been theirs. The legal system that was supposed to protect property rights failed them repeatedly. Native Americans faced extermination. Their children were kidnapped and sold into slavery under the pretense of apprenticeship. Native women were raped and killed. Entire communities were massacred. The brutality was systematic and government-sanctioned. Within 2 decades, most of California's native peoples were dead or displaced. African Americans in California faced discrimination despite the state being officially free. They couldn't testify against whites in court. They faced discrimination in employment and housing. Some were kidnapped and taken to slave states. Their freedom was conditional and constantly threatened. Everyone who wasn't a white American man was treated as less than human. Their suffering was ignored, their labor exploited, their deaths barely noticed. This was the ugly foundation upon which California was built. If we had to identify the absolute darkest moment in early California history, it would be the period from late 1849 through early 1850, when all the brutality, filth, and danger converged into a perfect storm of human suffering. By fall 1849, around 100,000 people had flooded into California. Most arrived with nothing after spending everything on the journey. They arrived to discover that the easy gold was gone, claimed by earlier arrivals. Prices were insane. Food was scarce. Winter was coming. The rain started in November and didn't stop. Northern California's wet season turned the entire region into mud. Not just mud in the streets, mud everywhere knee-deep, impossible to escape. Tents collapsed under the weight of water. Everything was soaked. There was nowhere dry to sleep. Hypothermia killed people who thought they were just cold and wet. They'd go to sleep shivering and never wake up. Their tent mates would find them in the morning, cold and stiff, and have to drag the body out before it started to decompose inside the tent. The flooding was catastrophic. Rivers rose rapidly, overflowing their banks and washing away mining camps entirely. People drowned in their sleep as water rushed through camps at night. Others grabbed what they could and fled, losing everything they owned. Some were swept away trying to save their belongings. Sacramento flooded completely in January 1850. The entire city went underwater. Buildings collapsed. People drowned. Disease exploded as floodwater mixed with sewage and contaminated every water source. Cholera struck in the middle of this chaos. The combination of contaminated water, overcrowding, weakened immune systems, and inability to maintain any hygiene created perfect conditions for the disease. People were dying so fast that bodies couldn't be buried properly. They were thrown into mass graves, often with dozens of corpses at once. In mining camps, the death rate was apocalyptic. Some camps lost 20–30% of their population over the winter. You go to sleep hearing men coughing and moaning, wake up to find several dead, help drag the bodies to a burial pit, and wonder if you'd be next. Starvation became real. Supply lines were disrupted by floods and mud. What food existed cost prices that most people couldn't pay. Men who'd crossed a continent and survived months of brutal labor starved to death within sight of each other because no one could share, everyone was desperate. Scurvy ravaged camps as access to any fresh food became impossible. Men's teeth fell out. Their gums rotted. Their old wounds reopened. They became too weak to work, which meant they couldn't earn money, which meant they couldn't buy the food that might save them. They died slowly, painfully from malnutrition. The psychological toll was crushing. Men realized they'd made a horrible mistake. They'd left families behind, spent everything to get to California, and now they were trapped, too poor to leave, but dying if they stayed. Letters from this period are heartbreaking. Men wrote goodbye letters to families they'd never see again. Suicide spiked dramatically. Men walked into rivers and didn't come out. They hanged themselves in their tents. They simply walked into the wilderness to die. The despair was overwhelming and there was no help, no counseling, no support. You either survived psychologically or you didn't. Violence escalated as desperation grew. Men killed each other over food, over shelter, over perceived threats. The veneer of civilization disappeared entirely. It became survival of the most ruthless, and mercy was a luxury no one could afford. This period, roughly 4 months from November 1849 to March 1850, represented early California at its absolute worst. It was a preview of hell, brutality without limit, filth that bred disease and danger from every direction simultaneously. Those who survived were scarred forever, physically and mentally, by what they'd endured and witnessed. Look around you right now. Take a moment to really appreciate where you are and what you have access to. Your life is so dramatically different from early California that it's almost impossible to comprehend the gap. You turn on a tap and clean water comes out. Water that won't give you cholera, typhoid, or dysentery. Water you can drink without fear, bathe in without worry. In early California, every drink of water was a gamble with deadly disease. The simple act of getting safe water, something you do without thinking, would have saved thousands of lives then. You're clean right now. You bathed recently. Your clothes are washed. You don't have lice. You don't smell like someone who hasn't bathed in months. You take this for granted, but it represents a quality of life that early California residents couldn't imagine. The simple ability to be clean prevents disease and maintains dignity that they never had. You have food in your kitchen right now. Fresh fruits and vegetables that prevent scurvy. clean meat that won't give you food poisoning. You can eat whenever you're hungry. You won't lose your teeth from malnutrition. This basic food security is something they desperately lacked. When you get sick, you go to a doctor who understands germ theory, has sterile equipment, and can prescribe antibiotics. A cut on your hand heals with simple first aid. In early California, that same cut could kill you in a week. Modern medicine has made survival almost guaranteed where it used to be unlikely. You work in conditions with safety regulations, workers' rights, and legal protections. You get days off. You're paid wages that can actually support you. You won't be crushed in a cave-in or lose a hand to unguarded machinery. Work is hard, but it's not the brutal, deadly exploitation that defined early California labor. You live in a society with functional law enforcement and a justice system. You can walk down the street without being armed. You can have disagreements without them escalating to lethal violence. You won't be lynched by a mob or murdered over a property dispute. The safety you feel is real, not illusory. Women have rights now. They can vote, own property, work any job, leave bad marriages. They have legal protection against assault. They control their own lives in ways that early California women couldn't dream of. Childbirth is safe now. Maternal mortality has dropped by over 99% since 1850. Children go to school instead of mines. They have childhoods. They're protected by laws that make exploiting them illegal. The idea of an 8-year-old working in a mine is horrifying to us now, but it was normal then. Immigrants have legal protections and paths to citizenship. While discrimination still exists, state-sponsored genocide doesn't. Chinese Americans aren't banned from testifying in court. Mexican Americans aren't systematically robbed of their land. The progress is real, even if imperfect. California today is one of the wealthiest places on Earth. It has world-class medical care, infrastructure, education, and opportunity. It was built on the suffering of people who lived through conditions that would break most of us. Every comfort you enjoy exists because people after them decided no one should have to live and die that way again. Life in early California was brutal, dirty, and dangerous, not as occasional conditions but as the defining characteristics of existence. Every day was a battle against filth, disease, violence, and exploitation. Most people lost that battle. The brutality was unrelenting, work that destroyed your body, violence that threatened you constantly. A system designed to exploit you until you broke. Early California ground people down with relentless efficiency, extracting their labor and health while giving back almost nothing. The filth was inescapable. You lived in it, slept in it, ate it, breathed it. The contamination was so universal that staying clean was impossible and staying healthy was mostly luck. Disease bred in the filth and killed thousands. The danger came from every direction. The work could kill you. The water could kill you. The people around you could kill you. The weather could kill you. Simply existing required constant vigilance and provided no guarantee of survival. This isn't an exaggeration. This isn't dramatization for effect. This is what life was actually like in early California. The primary sources, the letters, diaries, and records from that time, paint a picture of suffering that's almost incomprehensible to modern people. The people who built California paid a price we can barely understand. Thousands died. Thousands more were broken, traumatized, or exploited. They suffered in ways that would seem impossible to endure, yet they endured because they had no choice. Remember them when you think about the good old days. Remember that for most of human history, life was brutal, dirty, and dangerous in ways we've almost entirely eliminated. The progress we've made in sanitation, medicine, workers' rights, civil rights, and basic human dignity represents genuine human achievement. Be grateful. Deeply, genuinely grateful that you live now, in a time when survival doesn't require daily miracles. You have access to clean water, safe food, medical care, and legal protections that early California residents would have considered magical. And remember that this progress wasn't inevitable. People fought for it. They advocated for sanitation, for workers' rights, for civil rights, for all the things that make modern life survivable. The gap between early California and today represents conscious choices to build a better world. If this documentary opened your eyes to how harsh life used to be, explore the other state documentaries in this series. Each one reveals the brutal realities of early American life in different regions. Each one will make you grateful for the present. Thank you for watching. Share this with someone who romanticizes the past. They need to understand what the old days actually meant. And remember, life in early California was brutal, dirty, and dangerous. Be glad you weren't there.